This is Eddy Franklin on KBPN 104.7 FM. It's Sunday, November 25th, 2007, and I'm with you, as always, at just past 10 o'clock. Welcome to Blackpine After Dark. We're into the last week of November now, and December is right around the corner. It's 34 degrees tonight, cold enough that I can see my breath when I lean close to the window. The sky is clear, though. No rain like last week, just cold and still. Winter's settling in properly now. Thanksgiving was Thursday, and I'm still recovering. My wife and I hosted her sister and brother-in-law from Eugene, and we spent 2 days cooking and eating and talking and eating some more. The turkey was excellent, 18 pounds, roasted to perfection, skin crispy and golden. We had all the usual sides, mashed potatoes, stuffing, green beans, cranberry sauce, rolls, gravy. My wife made 2 pies, apple and pumpkin. We ate until we couldn't move, and then somehow we found room for pie. But here's what I want to tell you about the turkey sandwich I made Friday afternoon. This wasn't just any turkey sandwich. This was the turkey sandwich, the kind you can only make the day after Thanksgiving when you've got proper leftovers to work with. I toasted 2 thick slices of my wife's homemade bread. Then I layered on the turkey, cold, straight from the fridge, thick slices of it. Then a generous spoonful of stuffing, some cranberry sauce, a little bit of gravy that I warmed up just enough to be spreadable. I put the top slice on, cut it in half, and sat down at the kitchen table with that sandwich and a glass of milk. Let me tell you, that sandwich was better than Thursday's dinner. There's something about Thanksgiving leftovers that's almost magical. All those flavors have had time to settle, to blend together. The turkey's had time to soak up the other flavors. The stuffing's gotten denser, richer. Everything tastes more like itself somehow. I ate that sandwich slowly, savoring every bite, and when I was done I went upstairs and took a nap that lasted 2.5 hours, just completely knocked out. Woke up around 5 in the evening, disoriented and groggy, not sure what day it was for a solid minute. My wife was downstairs laughing at me. Apparently I'd been snoring loud enough to hear from the kitchen. That's Thanksgiving for you. Too much food, too much family in a good way, and a turkey sandwich that justifies the entire holiday. Tonight I've got news from the week, some announcements as we head into December, and I'm finally going to answer Rebecca's question from a few weeks back about how the apple orchards came to Blackpine. It's a good story, and it's been a long time coming. Plus, I'll tell you about Johnny Appleseed, who's probably the most famous person associated with apples in American history. And I've got your letters. Let's get started. So, Thanksgiving is over, and now we're in that strange period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The stores are already playing Christmas music, the decorations are going up, and everyone's starting to think about December. The town Christmas tree lighting is coming up Friday, December 7th, which is less than 2 weeks away now. Blackpine High is done with football for the season. The team had a good run this year, made it further than they have in a long time. Coach Martinez held an end-of-season meeting with the players last week, told them they should be proud of what they accomplished. Several of the seniors are already getting interest from college scouts, which is exciting. Michael Dawes in particular has been fielding calls. That kid's got a future if he wants it. The Watermill Restoration Project got some good news this week. The Historical Society applied for a state grant back in October, and they just heard back. They got it $50,000 toward the restoration, which is substantial. That money's earmarked for Phase 1, stabilizing the structure, replacing the roof, making it weatherproof. Work won't start until spring because you can't do that kind of construction in winter, but at least now they've got funding. Mayor Hutchins said, "This is a real win for Blackpine, and I agree that Mill's been part of this town for over 100 years. Good to see it getting a second life." The library's winter reading program starts December 1st. Dorothy says it'll run through February, and yes, there will be hot chocolate and cookies involved. She's putting together the book list this week. If you participated in the fall program, You know how this works. Read a certain number of books, get entered into a drawing for prizes. It's a good incentive to stay inside and read during the cold months, which frankly doesn't take much incentive for me. I like winter reading. There's something satisfying about sitting by a fire with a book while it's cold outside. The old cinema showed Shane this past weekend. Good turnout, Anthony said. This coming weekend they're switching over to holiday films. First one up is It's a Wonderful Life. Friday and Saturday at 7. Sunday matinee at 3. Classic Christmas movie. My wife loves it, watches it every year. I've probably seen it a dozen times by now, and it still gets me at the end. George Bailey realizing what he has. The whole town coming together. Good film. Weather this week looks cold but clear. Highs in the low 40s, lows in the upper 20s. No rain forecast, no snow yet. Just cold and dry. Bundle up if you're going out. That's the main news. Let me get to some announcements. Sweet and Tart is back to regular hours now, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day, except Sunday Elizabeth's doing a special on soup and sandwiches this week, which makes sense given how cold it's gotten. Hot food for cold weather. Miller's Market has their Christmas shopping hours posted now. Starting December 1st, they'll be open until 8 p.m. on weekdays instead of 6, and they're opening Sundays from 10 to 4 through Christmas. Bill's also starting to stock gift baskets and specialty items if you're looking for presents. He's got local honey, preserves, Blackpine Cider Company products, all sorts of things. Good place to shop if you want to give something local. The church is doing their annual Christmas Bazaar Saturday, December 8th from 10 to 4 crafts, baked goods, used books, all the usual stuff. Proceeds go to the church building fund. If you've got items to donate, drop them off at the church office this week. And the community center wants volunteers to help decorate the town Christmas tree, Thursday, December 6th, starting at 2 p.m. They've got lights and ornaments. They just need people to help hang everything. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours. If you can spare the time, they'd appreciate it. The tree lighting ceremony is the next night, Friday the 7th at 6 p.m. in the square. The library will be open regular hours through December except for Christmas week. Dorothy says she'll post the holiday schedule soon, but plan on the library being closed December 24th and 25th at minimum. That covers announcements. Let me step away for a minute. When I come back, I'll tell you about how the apple orchards came to Blackpine, which is a story I should have told weeks ago. Back in a moment. The house is quiet tonight. My wife's sister and brother-in-law left this afternoon around 3, headed back to Eugene. It was good having them here, but it's also good having the house back to ourselves. That's how it goes with house guests. You enjoy having them, and you enjoy them leaving. Both things can be true at once. The temperature's dropped another degree or two since we started 32 now, right at freezing. By morning, there'll be frost on everything, that white coating that makes the whole world look crystalline and beautiful for about an hour until the sun melts it away. December starts Saturday. We're in the last month of 2007 now, which doesn't feel possible. The years gone by fast. They all do, especially the older you get. When I was a kid, a year felt like forever. Now they slip by before you've had time to properly notice them. All right, let me answer Rebecca's question from a few weeks back. She wrote in asking about the history of the apple orchards, how they got started, who planted the first trees, all of that. I told her I'd look into it, and I did. Talked to some folks at the Historical Society, read through some old records, pieced together the story. So, Rebecca, this one's for you. The apple orchards in Blackpine started in 1891. That's 16 years before Oklahoma became a state, 5 years after the Statue of Liberty was dedicated, 30 years after the Civil War ended. The world was a different place. Blackpine was a different place, too. Smaller, rougher, built entirely around logging, and the lumber mill. The man who started it all was named Henrik Larsson. He was Norwegian, came to America in 1888 when he was 23 years old. He'd heard there was work in the Pacific Northwest, in the timber industry, and he wanted to build a life for himself in the New World. He ended up in Blackpine in 1889, got a job at the mill, worked as a logger for 2 years. But Henrik didn't want to be a logger forever. The work was brutal, long hours, dangerous conditions, men getting injured or killed regularly. The pay was decent, but the risk was high. Henrik wanted something steadier, something he could build a future on. He'd grown up on a farm in Norway. His family had apple trees, and he knew how to care for them. He knew about grafting, pruning, pest management, all the practical knowledge that comes from growing up around orchards. And when he looked at the land around Blackpine, the soil, the climate, the long growing season, he thought maybe apples could grow here. So, in 1891, Henrik bought 20 acres of land on the south side of town, paid for it with his savings from 2 years of logging work. The land wasn't much, mostly just cleared forest, some stumps still in the ground, rocky soil that needed work. But it was his, and he had a plan. He ordered apple saplings from a nursery in Portland. Different varieties to see what would grow well here: Gravenstein, Northern Spy, Baldwin, Wealthy, Wolf River. He planted them in neat rows, 50 trees to start. He built a small cabin on the property and lived there while he worked. The first few years were hard. Young apple trees don't produce fruit for several years. You plant them, and then you wait. You care for them. You protect them from deer and disease. You prune them and hope they survive. But you don't see any return on your investment for 3, 4, sometimes 5 years. During that time, Henrik still worked at the mill part-time to support himself. He'd work the mill in the morning, tend his trees in the afternoon and evening. The other loggers thought he was crazy. Why buy land and plant trees that wouldn't pay anything for years when you could make good money at the mill right now? But Henrik was patient. He believed in what he was doing. The trees started producing fruit around 1895. Not much at first. Young trees don't bear heavily, but the apples that came in were good, really good. The soil here turned out to be excellent for apples. Something about the mineral content, the drainage, the microclimate. It all worked. The apples were crisp, flavorful, kept well in storage. Better than what people could get shipped in from elsewhere. Henrik sold his first harvest at the general store in town, and at the millward spread. People wanted more. The next year he had a bigger harvest, sold everything he could grow. The year after that, bigger still. By 1900, Henrik had expanded to 40 acres, and 200 trees. He'd quit the mill entirely, was making his living entirely from apples. He'd also gotten married, a woman named Astrid who'd emigrated from Sweden. They built a proper house on the property to replace the cabin. Other people were watching. If Henrik could make money growing apples, maybe they could too. Several other men bought land and started planting orchards in the early 1900s. The Hadley family, you know them, they still run one of the biggest orchards in town. They planted their first trees in 1902. The Keller family started in 1904. The Chen family in 1906. Within 10 years, there were a dozen orchards operating around Blackpine. This turned out to be incredibly fortunate timing because the logging industry was already starting to decline. The best timber had been cut. The mill was running less and less. By 1910, the writing was on the wall. Logging wasn't going to sustain Blackpine forever. But the orchards were thriving. The soil was good, the climate was right, and there was a growing market for fresh apples and apple products. Orchards could ship their apples to Portland, to Seattle, to markets all over the region, cider, apple butter, dried apples. There were lots of ways to make money from apples. By 1920, when the mill finally shut down for good, the orchards had already become Blackpine's primary industry. What had started with Henrik Larsson planting 50 trees in 1891 had grown into an entire economy. The town survived the loss of logging because the orchards were there to take its place. Henrik Larsson died in 1943 at 78 years old. His obituary in the local paper called him the father of Blackpine's apple industry, which was accurate. He'd seen what was possible and had the patience to wait for it. His orchard passed to his son, then his grandson. The family sold it in the 1970s, but it's still operating today under different ownership. Most of the orchards that started in those early years are still here. The Hadley orchard, the Keller orchard, a few others. They've changed hands, been expanded or subdivided, but they're still producing apples, still the backbone of this town's economy. So that's how the apple orchards came to Blackpine. One Norwegian immigrant with logging experience and farming knowledge who saw an opportunity and had the patience to plant trees that wouldn't pay off for years, Henrik Larsson saved this town. Though he probably didn't know it at the time. He just wanted to grow apples. That's the story, Rebecca. I hope that answers your question. The orchards have been here for over 100 years now, and with any luck, they'll be here for another 100. All right, let me take another break. When I come back, I'll get to your letters. Back in a moment. It's the last Sunday in November, 4 Sundays until Christmas, 5 weeks until the end of the year. The older I get, the more aware I am of time passing, not in a morbid way, just in a noticing way. Another year almost gone, another cycle complete. My wife and I were talking earlier about Christmas plans. My sister's coming up from Arizona this year, flying in on Christmas Eve and staying through the day after Christmas. It'll be the first time she's been back to Blackpine for the holidays in about 5 years. She usually spends Christmas with her husband's family down in Phoenix, but this year they decided to make the trip north. I'm looking forward to it, honestly. It'll be nice to have her in the house again, to sit around the table like we used to when we were kids. My wife's already making lists of what needs cleaning and what groceries to buy. All right, let's get to your letters. P.O. Box 147, Blackpine, first one. Here is from Thomas. Eddy, my wife and I celebrated our 30th anniversary last week. 30 years. We got married young. Both of us were 22. And honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I loved her and wanted to spend my life with her. 3 decades later, I still feel that way. We've had hard years and good years, times when we struggled and times when everything felt easy. But we're still here, still together, still in love. I guess I'm writing to say thank you for the show. We listen together every Sunday night. Have for months now. It's become part of our routine, part of what we share. So thank you for that. And to anyone listening who's wondering if love lasts, it can, it does. You just have to keep choosing it. Thomas, congratulations on 30 years. That's no small accomplishment. Marriage is work. Good work, worthwhile work, but work nonetheless. The fact that you're still choosing each other after 30 years, that you still listen to this show together every Sunday night, that tells me everything I need to know about your marriage. You're doing it right. Thank you for writing. And you're welcome for the show. I'm glad it's part of your Sunday nights together. Next letter. This one made me laugh. Dear Eddy, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to write because I've noticed something lately. You spend every Sunday night up in that attic, talking on the radio for an hour, which is wonderful, and we all love listening. But I've also noticed that the gutters still need cleaning. The porch light has been flickering for 2 weeks, and there's a box in the garage that's been sitting there since August that you promised you'd deal with. I know the radio show is important to you, and I support it completely. But maybe this week, could you take care of a few things around the house? Just a thought. I love you very much, even when you're ignoring the gutters. Your wife, who's been very patient. Well, there it is, folks. My wife calling me out on the radio in front of the whole town. For the record, I did know about the gutters and the porch light. The box in the garage? I'm not sure what box she's talking about, but apparently it's been there since August, so I should probably figure that out. So here's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to clean those gutters, I'm going to fix the porch light, I'm going to find that box in the garage and deal with whatever's in it. And then Tuesday, once all that's done, I'll start thinking about next week's show. All right, one more letter. Eddie, I wanted to reach out about something I've been looking for. There's this book I've been trying to find for weeks now, and I can't seem to locate it anywhere. I've asked around town, but nobody seems to have it. It's called The Complete Guide to Autumn Gardening, and I really need it for my planning. If anyone has seen this book or knows where I can find a copy, I'd really appreciate it. My name is Paige Turner, and you can reach me through the library. Thanks so much, Eddie. Well, Paige, I hope someone out there has that book or knows where you can find it. Autumn gardening is important if you want your spring garden to succeed. A lot of preparation work happens in fall and winter. Getting the soil ready, planning what you're going to plant, all of that. If anyone listening has The Complete Guide to Autumn Gardening or knows where Paige can find a copy, stop by the library and let her know. Dorothy can help put you in touch. Good luck with your search, Paige. I hope you find what you're looking for. That's the letters for tonight. Let me tell you about Johnny Appleseed, and then we'll wrap up. December starts in 5 days. The stores will be fully decorated by then. The Christmas music will be constant, and everyone will be in that strange state of anticipation and stress that defines December. I like December, but I prefer November. November's quieter, less frantic, but that's over now. December's coming whether we're ready or not. All right, let me tell you about Johnny Appleseed. Most people know the name Johnny Appleseed. He's become an almost mythical figure in American folklore. The man who wandered around planting apple trees across the frontier, spreading orchards wherever he went. There are children's books about him, tall tales, exaggerated stories. But Johnny Appleseed was a real person, and the real story is actually more interesting than the myth. His name was John Chapman. He was born in Massachusetts in 1774, right at the beginning of the American Revolution. His mother died when he was young, and he grew up learning about farming and orchards from his father. By the time he was in his 20s, he'd become fascinated with apples and the idea of planting orchards on the frontier. In 1797, when he was 23 years old, John Chapman started traveling west, not all the way west. The frontier at that time was places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, areas that were just being settled, where pioneers were starting to build farms and towns, and Chapman had a plan. He would travel ahead of the settlers, find good land near water sources, plant apple nurseries, and then sell or give the young trees to settlers when they arrived. He wasn't just scattering seeds randomly like the folklore suggests. He was running a business, establishing nurseries, growing trees that would be ready for settlers to plant. When they built their homesteads, Chapman would visit cider mills in Pennsylvania, collect the pomace, that's the mashed up apple pulp left over after cider making, and extract the seeds from it. Those seeds were free, just waste product from the mills. He'd carry them west in bags, plant them in clearings he'd prepared, fence off the areas to protect them from deer, and then tend the nurseries for a few years until the saplings were ready to sell or give away. This was clever for several reasons. First, under the law at the time, if you planted 50 apple trees on a piece of land, you could claim it as your own. So Chapman's nurseries helped him establish land claims that he could later sell. Second, apples were essential on the frontier. You couldn't just buy apples at a store. You had to grow them yourself. Having access to apple trees when you were starting a new homestead was valuable. And third, apples meant cider, and cider was the main drink for a lot of people. At that time, water wasn't always safe to drink, but fermented cider was. Chapman did this for nearly 50 years. He traveled through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, establishing nurseries, selling and giving away trees, helping settlers get started with their orchards. He lived simply. People who met him described him as wearing rough clothes, often going barefoot even in cold weather, sleeping outdoors most of the time. He was deeply religious, a member of the Swedenborgian Church, and he'd preach to anyone who'd listen. He became famous during his lifetime. People called him Johnny Appleseed, this eccentric but kind man who showed up with apple trees and helped pioneers get established. He was generous. He'd give trees away to families who couldn't afford to buy them. He was tough. He could walk 30 miles in a day without complaint. And he was dedicated. He kept doing this work for decades, planting thousands of trees across the frontier. John Chapman died in 1845 in Indiana. He was 70 years old. By that time, he'd established orchards across thousands of square miles. Some of those trees he planted are still alive today, over 175 years later. Here's what I find remarkable about Johnny Appleseed. He understood something important. He knew that apple trees take years to mature and produce fruit. He knew he wouldn't be around to see most of the trees he planted reach their full size. But he planted them anyway, because he knew future people would need them. He was literally planting for people he'd never meet, for a future he wouldn't see. That's vision, that's generosity, that's faith in the future. When Henrik Larsson planted those first 50 apple trees in Blackpine in 1891, he was doing the same thing Johnny Appleseed had done. Planting for a future that didn't exist yet, trusting that the work would pay off eventually. Both men understood that some things are worth doing even when you won't see the results yourself. Every time you eat an apple or drink cider, you're benefiting from someone who planted Abe on a tree years ago, maybe decades ago, someone who did the work and waited patiently for the tree to grow. That's worth remembering. So that's Johnny Appleseed, the real man behind the legend, not a magical figure scattering seeds randomly, but a practical businessman with a generous spirit who understood that planting trees was an investment in the future. That's your apple fact for tonight. The temperature's down to 30 degrees now. By morning it'll probably be in the mid-20s. Winter's here, no question about it, December through February, the cold months, the dark months, but also the months of holidays and family and firelight and staying inside with good books and hot coffee. I'll be back next Sunday, December 2nd, first Sunday of December. We'll be into the holiday season proper by then. Christmas decorations everywhere, shopping in full swing, the whole town preparing for the end of the year. If you've got stories to share, if you've got questions you want answered, write to me. P.O. Box 147, Blackpine. I read every letter. Until then, take care of yourselves. Stay warm. Check in on your neighbors, especially the elderly ones who might need help with snow shoveling or grocery shopping when the weather gets bad. And if you have gutters that need cleaning, speaking to myself here, do it before winter really sets in. Thank you for listening tonight. Thank you for being part of this. This is Eddy Franklin, and you've been listening to Blackpine After Dark on KBPN 104.7 FM. Good night, Blackpine.